All right, traders, welcome to today's recap. This is Christian from Tribeca Trade Group, and it is about a half hour after the close, and it's Wednesday the 10th. So, really nice day for the averages. I'll tell you, I'm probably most surprised. I thought, today, honestly, I'm happy to kind of share my thoughts when I'm right or when I'm wrong. But I thought we would see a little bit more volatility today. I've got the first solar chart up. I'm going to talk about that name in just a second. But I don't know. Maybe I'll start with the VIX. There's certainly a number of different subjects that we could talk about, which I want to go over the technicals and the indices too. But very busy day, and I think we'll just start with the VIX for a second. But yeah, we had this on the chart of the VIX, which I know people like to analyze just like they do the just a regular stock chart or sector or major indice. But it's a little bit difficult sometimes, I think, analyzing the VIX chart. Or some people look at VXXB, which I will not. I will never try to chart a VXXB. Or VXXB chart, I should say, because that name, just so you know, of course, the volatility, that does a horrible job at tracking the VIX. So what I look at is the VIX chart when I do. But we had this nice green candle. Well, I don't want to say nice green candle, but we definitely had a tick up in volatility. I kind of thought that we would have maybe another day of volatility behind that, but it just didn't happen. And two central bank kind of events for the day. We had the ECB. Draghi spoke today, and kind of the same thing as what we've been hearing. Just that they're going to be accommodative. They're very worried about growth. And then the second one was, we did not have a Fed meeting. We just had the FOMC minutes, and the minutes are just what's occurred in the past. But sometimes you can get a little bit of a look at what they're really thinking from the last meeting. But it's so far in the past. I always try to think about like fading what happens in the Fed minutes, right? Very different than the actual FOMC meeting. But sure enough, we had a little bit of a knee-jerk reaction midday to that, and it just got completely faded, and volatility really started to come out. And you could see that we finished at 1330 in the VIX and below yesterday's open. So it's pretty amazing that we're just not seeing that volatility at all, and it's just as a kind of continue as is. And so what to do with this when we're still kind of crawling up here. And I've talked about this a couple times now, that the 5-period moving average is way above the 20. So for me, I'll stick. I'm trying to stick to my system and be disciplined, and kind of just wait a little bit longer for maybe a little bit of volatility, just at least to the 20-day moving average kind of catches up. Sorry, I keep mispronouncing things here. At least until this kind of comes in to kind of meet the 20-day moving average. I just think that's a better place to really go crazy adding risk. Regardless, I keep kind of adding some smaller trades on while this is happening, and they've been working out very well for me. So, P&L continue another day where I'm at this year's highs for P&L. So, I'll give that figure at the end of the month, as I don't like to jinx things. But I feel like the way that this market has been going, I've just actually I called it lucky this morning, and some people said, well, that's not luck. But I just happen to be in the right names. A lot of the software names, I just continue to buy on the dip whenever these things kind of get hit a little bit. So Zscaler was a name that we added the other day. I thought my bogey was 60.49. We got close enough to that for me to start a position, and I always leave room in case it does go a little bit lower, so this way I can add more to it. But I didn't have to. And look at this thing, up 5.4%. This one I went into stock. I did not do options. Because the implied volatility in some of these names is just too high, and the options are a little bit wide. But I think just trading the stock, you have enough volatility. So I continue to kind of mix stock and options where I see fit. Another name that I've been adding to into the weakness was Coupa Software. This I took the whole thing off, and I was going to possibly restructure it at the end of the day. It's got to get through this 95.75. I still like the name, but hey, I'm going to be disciplined. And tomorrow's another day. Also, look at the MACD crossover that we got. So I really want to get back into this name, but for now, I have learned not to be greedy as well. It's a very fine line between letting your winners run and also being a little bit too greedy. So this will be a name to watch tomorrow. Perhaps if it's an inside day tomorrow, that might be entice me to get involved, because we've now had 3 green, really nice green candles. So that's kind of what I would love, is maybe an inside day tomorrow. That would be a perfect situation. Maybe start a position and then wait for the breakout to kind of hit here and coup. What else? Twilio was another name that we put on for a small swing. This one I think still could have some more, but it was up 2% today. So, from where I added it, which was down in here, just really nice. What else in terms of names? I'll talk about a little bit about First Solar. Autodesk, I was able to get it. Look at this one. So this one I was patient the last couple days. I just had a little bit too much time in this call spread. But $7.50. I paid $2 for this out at $6.50. So was again patient, letting that last piece of the trade run. So really nice, and I don't really want to hold that another 6 days to option expiration to try to get that last dollar. Salesforce, nice trade. So Salesforce, we did our research. There was a call buyer, and Salesforce is a name that I really love. It's one of my really names that I like long term. But we saw calls go up in this yesterday in Salesforce, and I checked open interest because there was. It's really tough to tell whether or not they're adding or taking something down. But there was 10,000 of this. And look at the size of the trade. So I don't think I emphasized this too much yesterday because I just didn't know. June 160 calls going up for $7 with open interest of 10,000. Sometimes they take it down, but I looked at the open interest today and they increased it. So I'm like, hey, that's a nice little signal. So I was paying attention to that one, and we played that one for a day trade. But I still like this one. Finished on the absolute highs of the day. But yeah, over and over, this group just continues until it stops doing what it's been doing, which is this is Autodesk. Anytime that you get a nice dip in this group, you have to kind of just hold your nose and buy when you get that move down. And by the way, Autodesk never really sold off that hard. Zscaler was down. Remember on this day it was down 10%, over 10%, I think, at one point. But this needed to kind of come out. I think it got a little bit too bullish. So let me talk a little bit about First Solar. The First Solar was a name, and hey, I really love that the names that we put in the weekend newsletter. When you put in the work and you get rewarded, or it works out really well, you feel really rewarded for the work that you do. So First Solar has been a name that we've been talking about for the last couple weeks, but I added it back in last week's newsletter as a focus name, and and I didn't even have that big of a position on, and it worked out really well. By the way, short interest is like 14% of this ETF. The other thing that we talked about in this weekend's newsletter is energy, and not just traditional energy, XOP, XLE, the oil names, but also the solar names. So I substituted out of my First Solar position today, and I went into the solar ETF, which First Solar is about a 10% weight in this name. So I think having that exposure is perfect. Plus, when you think about it, in the next couple weeks, you're with earnings, right? I think First Solar reports in a couple weeks, so that's not a name that I'm going to want to hold into earnings. And I think it's a pretty decent strategy to, if you don't want to hold some of this, don't have that single stock exposure, to some names. What you could do is kind of substitute out. It's 425, right? So which is a couple weeks when First Solar reports. But you could basically just substitute out and go into an ETF if you don't want to have that single stock exposure around that time. So that's what I did, and I went into the solar ETF. This thing has to clear outside of value, but I think pretty good looking. A few other trades that we did today. MDB. This was again, same space. So I really kind of cleared out of some of the risk that I had from buying some of these names on the dip. And then it's just kind of rinse and repeat. And again, I'll have my eye on a couple of those names like Coop and Salesforce and a few other ones too. NXPI was, we saw some calls. And, the other thing that's been nice about the last couple of days is the option activity has been pretty legitimate. TPX we talked about. I kept the last piece of a day trade that we saw yesterday, and I sent this out to members. Kind of looked at the charts, and again, it always has to line up for me in the technicals, unless it's just a day trade and I'm playing momentum or something like that. But for a trade, it helps so much more if the technicals really show something nice. And I thought this is basically what I saw yesterday in TPX, which we talked about in yesterday's video. And then I looked at this virgin point of control, and that's a great place to kind of take off a trade. So completely out of that trade today. But up 7% after yesterday's big day. So again, really, again, feel like a little bit lucky with that. But hey, sometimes it helps, and you need a little bit of luck on your side. But again, the call activity was great in TPX yesterday. A few other things. So today's option activity. Just kind of also looking at yesterday, this MRVL that we've been seeing, call buying in, just really nice with these semis. I thought AMD, although kind of an inside day today, didn't do exactly what I wanted it to do. I started a position in this one today, didn't add to it at the end of the day because it just didn't do what I wanted. Nvidia had a nice day today, up 1.5%. I want to talk a little bit about Amazon, just to kind of let subscribers know what I did with this trade today. So I had on a weekly call spread, which I hit targets earlier in the week. And then what I did was I started a position out in April for call spreads as well, just to give it a little bit more time. So I sold out of the ones that expire this week and went into next week. This looks, again, why I like Amazon right now is because I'm looking for names that could possibly run into earnings. But on every time frame, right, on the weekly, it's above value. Again, it doesn't mean it can't check back to support, but it's above value on the daily. It's above value on the hourly. And then today it was kind of stuck for a bit after it was weak yesterday. Almost took, I don't know if this is close enough, but it almost took out this virgin point of control on the 5-minute. But I don't think you have to worry about that unless we're back below value. But closed right around the highs of the day, and we'll see. Definitely will be one of the names that I'm watching for tomorrow. But so right now I'm in April expiration, and keep in mind you have 1 day less of April expiration because Friday is a holiday. Couple other names that we saw option activity in, the refiners. Somebody asked me what's going on with MPC that keeps seeing call activity. I'm by no means an expert in oil names, especially refining, but this is one that we've seen call buying now a couple times, and there is a virgin point of control, which I would target if you're in this trade right around $65, which is about another $1.40 up. But if you look at Valero, possibly something to do with the gas inventories today, or the today was the oil inventory report, but they do report gas inventories out of that report, and then you get the nat gas inventories tomorrow. But Valero looks pretty nice. HFC is another name that had a nice day. I think PXD. So again, you got a couple different groups. Also the pot stocks, which have been kind of cold for a little bit. I won't make a joke out of the pot stocks, but MJ had a I think a bullish engulfing. I think that's big enough. Notice again that MJ took out that virgin point of control. This is something that we talked about in the trading room to basically take profits here. And I think a couple of people who had this on did that. If you go through this group, I think CGC did not close on the highs, but I don't know, something to watch. They've been kind of cold since Tillery reported earnings. I have not really done a great job trading this group, to be perfectly honest, but I still kind of watch it a little bit. I just think there's plenty of other names to play. I think that these are pure momentum plays, and I don't know, with something that I don't have a huge conviction because of their valuation to stay in for that long, I find myself, whenever I get into one of these names, I get out very quickly. I just don't have the conviction to stay into these momentum names for like longer than a day or two, and that's just me. A couple other names on my watch list were Sage. Sage closed on the highs. This took out the virgin point of control, but it looks like it's edging higher. I like this chart a lot. Another one is GBT in the space. Also putting in a bull flag. Pretty nice performance there. So one swing trade that I did add today. Again, this is a preemptive type trade. GoDaddy, I'm not sure what they did, if they were short call. I'm not entirely sure what they did with these calls, but for me, sometimes the call activity just kind of alerts me to kind of take a look at a position. But they rebooked this trade, so I know it looks like it went up on the ask. I don't know if they were unwinding this or not. I'll check open interest tomorrow. They could have also been short those calls. I'm not exactly sure, but for me, I kind of just take it from there because, again, we never know exactly what they're doing with the option activity. But it looks like GoDaddy has been consolidating since a gap up on earnings, and came into support, failed to rally and take that next leg higher, but it's trying again, right? And so I started a position. I went all the way out to August. There's no June or July calls, but I think just May. Again, we've got one more week of April expiration, and then May is going to be front month, and there's huge theta decay on let's say right now May calls. Every day you're swimming against the tide, so I would much rather, if this doesn't break out here and it kind of settles back in, you're going to get creamed on May calls, right? You'll lose that 285 that it would cost you to get into this trade very, very quickly. So I would rather go out a little bit further, maybe pay a little bit more, and then if it happens to chop around, then I can get out and I won't lose that much money. Knock on wood. And I think that's a better way to go. Same thing, I think a lot of people, including myself, have been looking at Square. Square has basically done nothing since earnings, right? It's been chopping around. It's had some false moves. I've been in stock for this thing for probably about a month, and I haven't lost anything on the stock. Now, if you're in options, you got creamed, right? Because Square's has a high implied volatility. So you kind of have to, pick your weapon wisely. In my situation, I think stock is a better way to play it right now, until it starts to move. And I could always add a little bit of calls to my stock position, but again, I've looked at the Square like probably 4 or 5 times in the last 2 weeks as thinking it might break, and having a position of stock, it's fine. It's I haven't lost anything. But if I would have been into, probably what I would have done is gone into like June calls, and probably the June calls, if I would have bought them the same time I bought the stock, I would have a major loss on my hands. I probably would have lost, if I would have purchased a contract for $5, it's probably marking at 2 at this point. So again, big difference between like how long you're looking to kind of hold a position, where you think it's going to go, and also putting on a position without a signal, right? I mean, this is not giving us a signal yet, so you could always put either a starter position on an options, something where you're not going to get upset over losing the premium, or put on a stock position and just wait for it for the signal to materialize. And then if it does make that move, in this sense, I would be watching 77.40, that top of value. Then you can go ahead and add a little bit of options to that positions. But again, such a big thing, and I think when newer traders start to use options, the time value is such a big can really make or break you on how you're trading some names. So we'll leave it there for the day. I still think, I try again to be a net seller, but I still think that we're extended. So, I mean, if this market continues to go higher, I have some positions on and I'll make money. But I think, looking at the Qs right now, again, I'm not trying to be, as I mentioned the other day, Debbie Downer, but could we continue to go higher? Sure, but I think we're really starting to get extended here in the short term. So, use that and prepare and be disciplined, along the way to try not to get hurt, and make sure that you're locking in those gains. I mentioned later in the day in the room that I'll probably will actually at this point be taking some money out of my trading account just so I'm locking it in and it's kind of gone away from my screens, and then it's not tempting, because I'll tell you, reading the tape every day, you will always find something that looks attractive. All right, so that's it for today's video. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow in the trading room.